get to the very last movie in the X-Men franchise. Now there of course will be New Mutants coming out exactly next week, which I will hopefully be reviewing on time. But before that comes out, the last main adventure with any of the X-Men characters that we knew and loved, with any of the actors that we knew and or loved, is Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix, or later on X-Men Dark Phoenix, if you're using NordVPN, which I'm not sponsored by, but I would recommend mainly to go into Europe, mainly the UK, so you can get it on Disney Plus, because it's there, and not in America for some reason. God knows why. But you know, if you can find it, whether on streaming services or DVD, it's now X-Men Dark Phoenix. But, you know, when it was originally, it was just Dark Phoenix, with the X being really emphasized, and weirdly looking less like X-Men, and more like X-Files. So, yeah. It didn't look promising basically from the outset. The exact same writer who again made fucking Elektra and the bad Triple X movie, who came on to make 3 and then continued just being a problem for the rest of the movies. But of course he very clearly wanted to do justice to this, and he was allowed to be not only the director, but the sole fucking writer. The problem with this movie is that he just shortened it up so much. Now what I didn't mention about the third movie is that the main reason why the movie was so messed up is because, well, the director and writer kind of changed stuff around in the script constantly. So it just, you know, felt very messy and not very well paced, as I mentioned. But this feels finely paced. It was just made by a guy who just doesn't know how to write a story. What happened in this is ultimately due to actors not being able to show up or not wanting to be in this franchise anymore. Basically taking out parts where they were supposed to be in the movie from the script and not replacing them. Or if they did, with random lesser known characters that they made specifically for the movie and not any kind of actual X-Men character. And then because they decided that they just didn't have enough time, that they just had to shorten up characters. The main villain of this, Jessica Chastain's character, was supposed to be Emma Frost. Which you can see of her showing up in the movie, the first scene, in a white dress. Very clearly those ideas were still very much there, but they just replaced her and the Hellfire Club, which I guess she was going to recreate, just to aliens. Aliens that, by the way, look like the aliens from Signs. So they just look boring, very uninspired, and that's very unfortunate. And the most funny part about this movie is that those aliens, because they're shapeshifters, were supposed to be the Skrulls, but then they were changed to a really lesser-known alien in the Marvel comics, the D'Bari, whom, by the way, don't shapeshift in the comics. Do shapeshift in the comics, because when you have the Skrulls, why do you need to make anything else that also shapeshifts? That and the whole last act, which was supposed to be Dark Phoenix going absolutely crazy with a whole bunch of ships, was changed. So the whole third act had to be entirely shifted around. It was all thanks to Captain Marvel having exactly what they wanted to do in their movie. And also apparently because of test screenings not doing well. But that would imply that that footage still exists somewhere. That there's a cut of that footage that exists, when I very much doubt it. Regardless of that big mess of them having to change the whole third act, this movie still is just kind of fucking boring. And I feel like it doesn't have anything to do with any production problems, which kind of, again, weren't really a thing, because at this point, Fox was just like, whatever, do whatever the fuck you want. They were basically right on the heels of being bought out by Disney, so they didn't give a shit. Especially because Laura Shuna Donner, who at this point was working with basically every movie to this point, was just kind of not really in the picture at this point anymore. And Bryan Singer, whole other story there. So because of this movie is the furthest you could possibly get from the vision that was the original X-Men movie from 2000, 20 years later, this franchise, 20 fucking years later, this franchise is a whole other thing, and at this point is just a fucking mess. And this movie continues that. At this point, the X-Men are superheroes around the world. Again, we've established that they have their own comics in-universe, so people really, really like them. The thing is, they still don't like mutants. Again, there's still mutant forces that are putting people in jails just in case, and that's slowly being phased in as the X-Men are being phased out. As, of course, we'll see, this is the same timeline as Logan, so, you know, that's gonna happen. Right in the beginning of that, we do see that the Mutant Containment Unit, the MCU, is on the precipice of being the more important thing, but until then, the X-Men are still, you know, still very much being a thing. So when the President asks them to deal with some weird solar flare that apparently is interfering with a recently launched spaceship, which just does not seem like an X-Men thing, but okay. apparently can go to space now, allows them to go into space, and they're able to get most of them out until Nightcrawler and Jean have to go in there and go back in there to find their captain. And while Nightcrawler and the captain come out perfectly fine, Jean Grey doesn't. She's nearly destroyed by the weird solar flare thing and absorbs it, and then seemingly is perfectly fine. Back home, we get this cool little private concert that the X-Men get with the help of Dazzler, which is pretty neat. You know, it's cool to see another lesser-known X-Men character show up. It sucks that she's just in this smaller scene. Okay, this is the only real good scene in this movie, because the characters seemingly kind of feel that they generally care about each other and are more like a team, rather than just people talking. I wish we had more of this scene, because it would have been good to establish who these characters really are. We've only just recently met these versions of the characters. Please establish who they are and why we should care about this specific version of these characters. And they don't. They really don't. We do get some kind of cute moments with Cyclops and Jean Grey, but only in this tiny little scene. And ultimately, after Jean Grey kind of freaks out and is brought to her room and then decides to just off and leave. There's seemingly some kind of connection between these two that I would love for them to show more of. I like the Jean Grey-Cyclops relationship, but they don't do that here. She just leaves. She just up and leaves. Jessica Chastain's characters kind of go in the background of all of what our X-Men are going to be doing for the rest of the movie, so they're kind of looking around and then, you know, getting new bodies. They weirdly kill the people who they pretend to be, but I don't think they even need to do that, but okay, whatever. After the US government very quickly is off to try and hunt Jean, alongside apparently putting a bunch of mutants in, quote, internment camps, which is not what they would say in the 90s, but okay. The X-Men go out and try and find her as she's went off to her original childhood home, where she finds out through reading her dad's mind that her dad, first off, isn't dead, as was thought by her previously. As the movie actually began off with a neat little flashback back to 1975 that showed off how long she's been with Professor X and that she thought that she killed her parents a long time ago. That, yes, her mom died, but her dad never did, so she kind of freaks out once again. The X-Men try and stop her, but with her crazy psychic power, she basically, like, breaks Quicksilver, who is not in the rest of this movie. I forgot. I think I said in Apocalypse he just wasn't in this movie. And he basically isn't. He gets hurt here, and that's it for him. And double that for Mystique, who ultimately tries to calm her down, but fucking dies, because Jennifer Lawrence didn't want to be in the series anymore. So there you go. So the government very quickly turns on the X-Men, basically sending the, again, MCU after them to put certain mutants that are apparently super dangerous into internment camps, which is probably not the word they would use on the news in reality, but whatever. We have to put the message in your face as much as possible. She goes to Magneto, but after nearly killing some soldiers that were sent to find her, Magneto's like, yo, piss off. So she just kind of goes off on her own, eventually meeting Jessica Chastain's character, and seemingly finding out that she was given the power she now currently has because a cosmic force that, as far as they are off in space, it has chosen her for the whatever mystic reason it has. It has none of the really cool mysticism and grandeur that the actual Phoenix from the comics has. It's just random magic cloud now gives you powers. She trusts this random alien lady who, besides being an alien, but by the way, doesn't even tell her she's a fucking alien. She just, I think we all just assume and then go with it for the rest of the movie. I mean, we the audience knows, but, you know, she doesn't fucking know, so she just accepts this random lady way more than she does Magneto or Xavier, and just starts letting her not teach her to use her powers, just tell her whatever she wants. Beast, really angry about the fact that Jean had killed Mystique, teams up with Magneto to go kill Jean Grey. This makes sense for Magneto to do this kind of thing. It's not completely out of his character, he literally did it like a movie ago, but I'll get to this. So the X-Men, again, without Quicksilver and now Beast, kind of fight against them in a very quick, not that badly choreographed fight. It was actually kind of interesting. I like the weird whiplash hair guy, and not totally sure what that knife girl is supposed to be doing. But I like that there's a kind of weird psychic battle of her and Xavier over Nightcrawler. That's kind of funny. Magneto gets his ass kicked by Jean Grey, as ultimately she now fully utilizes her powers, until of course she reads Charles's mind to find out that, oh, he actually was super trustworthy and was just trying to keep her safe all of this time. Which of course was what he was saying, and if she had read his mind when they confronted her before, none of this would have happened. And Mystique and Quicksilver would have still been in the movie. There also wouldn't have been a movie. The MCU are able to kind of like capture all of them, mainly because Jean Grey kind of just clonks out because the alien lady is allowed to take her powers. Again, why are you trusting the random alien lady? So the alien lady pisses off as the MCU take all of them away. The aliens go back for Jean instead of just leaving her to fuck off, and they basically kill all of the MCU soldiers. One of them finally lets the X-Men out for them to do the X-Men thing. An actually pretty cool fight scene on the train happens, where they all show their different powers very well, actively seeming quite like a team. It's actually really cool. Fuck, Nightcrawler does some stuff. He fucking slices up dudes. It's really cool. Magneto like crushes a whole bunch of dudes in a part of a train and just throws that part of the train off of the track. It's actually really cool. Not gonna lie. But of course, Jessica Chastain's character shows up. She starts just wrecking everyone, and then gets to Jean, which Jean just with her psychic powers that she reawakens, because I guess part of the cloud goop is still in her. The two of them kind of psychic off with all of the X-Men in safety bubbles into wherever they end up in, some kind of fucking yard or whatever, and they psychic battle until they both explode in space. The end. Of course, not really the end, because of course we see that the school is now named after. All the characters go back to their regular day lives, seemingly where they'll be at the end of Days of Future Past. We even see something in the sky where it's like, oh, Jean Grey will come back, because of course she is. She was alive at the end of Days of Future Past. But while we see that little poof in the sky, there's also one last little conversation with Magneto and Professor X, where they have a nice little game of chess with the most unsatisfying, boring lines of dialogue, which, you know what? I guess same thing to be said about the rest of the fucking movie, too. This movie is honestly not horrible, it's just very, very, very boring. I didn't fucking care about anything in this fucking movie. All the characters just had nothing to them. There was nothing built off from previous movies. No, like, real continuation of any kind of emotional beats or any arcs established in even the last movie, which they very clearly completely ignored because, again, her powers are meant to naturally be in her. I know different timeline and all, but if you're gonna establish something as something, even if that something wasn't accurate previous, now it can't be forever. You know, that's just like, I think they had to change that midway because they still kept in the fact that he kept the memories psychically away from her, and that would have made sense if she had the same kind of power she had in 3, but she doesn't. She's just a regular psychic in 3. But of course, she isn't just a regular psychic in this one. She had the crazy psychic powers in the last movie, so what were those? She very clearly has to be the same kind of power set that she had in 3 that made her go all crazy. It's just now also there's a giant evil cloud in space. Which, yeah, the fact that they just completely butcher that, which is just absolutely fucking hilarious how they give this a second try, and it's actively worse, because it has nothing. Yes, there is a random cosmic force that gives Jean power, just like in the comics, but it has none of the grandeur or mystique, as I mentioned, so it's just kind of fucking random cloud that exists. It's the same fucking thing as that big goop from fucking Green Lantern, and Galactus from the shitty Fantastic Four 2. That's what it looks like. Now it's in her. That's not the Phoenix Force. Boring fucking aliens that add nothing to the overall mythos of the X-Men and their timeline and such. It's just, why the fuck should I care when clearly none of the characters have any real motivation or point in this movie? You've just written them to say things and do things for no good reason. I imagine I'd get back to Magneto and Beast even. Beast suddenly being murderous would have maybe made sense last movie or even Days of Future Past, but he is well past that and has went through a whole character arc of being mutant and proud now. He would have been absolutely angry, sure, and I understand his whole argument with Professor X. But the fact that he's just going to go off and murder Jean, that just seems like completely not the Beast we've known the last forever movies. There really needed to be a big turn for that to happen, and double for Magneto, who again, I feel like he would have been a person to do that kind of thing, but he very quickly just turns back to the X-Men side, and is now perfectly fine. He's now full pacifist. And you know what? The whole ending of this movie, well, again, I admit it's actually a pretty cool action scene, should have been the middle of it. But literally her going to see Magneto was an hour into the movie. Of an hour and 40 fucking minutes. That means the rest of the 40 minutes are talking to the alien bitch who has had no character development. That needed to be the middle part of the movie. You should have had more character development to establish why we should care about these characters as well, and then had a whole third act that should have been, yeah, you had to redo it, but at least have a different third act, for God's sakes. Have them build up to something else now. I would prefer if they just did the same thing they did for Apocalypse, for God's sakes. Have them near destroy the world so the X-Men have to go to him. Fuck it. Prefer you just copy shit than have nothing there and have your movie end when it is barely feeling to begin. And all that's worsened by the fact that this movie is so drab and boring and fucking lazy. The actors clearly just didn't give any shit about this whole movie. Jennifer Lawrence is so bored and so whispery. She just phoned in her lines so badly in this, as did the actor Beast, and just fucking everyone. The only one with any actual emotion was Jessica Chastain as the human form of herself before being an alien. And the aliens are the worst in this because they're meant to be like unfeeling creatures. But it's like, unless you're going to make them full Borg, they're just boring. They're just boring creatures. Those aren't like intimidating figures. They're just people being boring. And the shot composition is just so plain and boring. The best shot I remember from the movie is when Jennifer Lawrence was talking to Xavier in the beginning of it, where it moved up slightly. That's it. I couldn't tell you anything about anything else with this movie. It was so boring and plain, which merged with the fact that the coloring of the movie is mainly grays and flat colors just made this so uninteresting to watch. This movie felt like it was so slow and was just beginning. I was like, oh, this better be only 30 minutes in, but it's an hour in, and I'm so just like, fucking might as well end it, you know? Shit. I didn't hate the effects in this. They were miles better than the previous movie. They at least looked better. They didn't look like they were fully there, but they looked a lot better. I didn't like the weird cloud shit in space like I mentioned. That still looks fucking stupid. But the rest of this actually looked pretty alright. And again, you know what? That train scene, while it's not the best directed, because it's just kind of all over the place, and our writer-director friend doesn't know how to fucking direct an action scene, even though he's seen multiple people do it, but whatever. You know what? I guess with that, I didn't hate this movie. It was boring, it was drab as all shit, and I just didn't really care about any of the characters or actors or the plot. But you know what? It wasn't contrived, it made some amount of sense. The action was at least watchable in some capacity. It wasn't unbelievable and stupid looking. The effects aren't good, but they're not horrible. And there weren't scenes that made me go, fucking excuse me, like the previous movie had. I would probably put it obviously below 3, but probably on the same level of Apocalypse, but definitely above it. This is not worse than Apocalypse. I don't hate this movie. I don't like it. God, no, I don't like this movie. But it's just boring beyond belief, and just incredibly disappointing. This was written by people who just didn't know these characters at all. And these versions of these characters are obviously only recently established. They're not the same guys that, like, I did kind of grow up with. And they're certainly shit nothing like the actual comics. These are new versions of the characters that needed to be grown. They weren't in the previous one. So you have blank slates all around. Basically, full cast of blank slates. And when you are mainly focusing on the biggest blank slate, that being Jean Grey, and with that new alien character, you got nothing. So when you give me no time to actively establish who these characters are and why I should care, I don't care when you begin to actually have the plot. Which, by the way, again, takes fucking forever to actually get to. A movie I'll eventually talk about, hopefully sometime next year. Characters are kind of being stupid. I want them to be better because I know who these characters are and I know they can be better. But the characters look boring, the movie looks boring, they're acting boring, and the whole movie's taking fucking forever because it wants to be so dramatic and it absolutely is not. That movie, of course, being Star Trek 1. Now, I obviously like their costumes better in this than fucking Star Trek 1. God knows I'll talk about those belts eventually. It doesn't take whole entire shots of looking at a big, dumb CGI thing. It really, honestly, looks better than the CGI in this, but whatever. But it's on that level of, boy, God, do I not care. I don't hate it. Nothing's making me go, fuck you, to the people making it. But it's just very disappointing. This is not the way to end your whole franchise. This is just such a big disappointment. I mentioned in Logan, this was a franchise on its last legs. It was already dead. It's technically been dead for a little bit, but fully petered out in Logan, and that was a fine conclusion. This movie added nothing. This movie had no reason to exist. Logan was already the finale to these characters. Now, technically, this was probably meant to be the next in a line of movies, I'm sure. God knows the post-credits scene that had Mr. Sinister in Apocalypse that I didn't mention because it has nothing to do with Dark Phoenix was maybe going to lead into something new, but this, that we know the X-Men movies are done, this movie existing just feels like a blight on the overall franchise. You know what, I feel like I could have minded this more if it was made, or at least released before Logan. Like, okay, we have two pieces of shit, that being Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, but at least we got Logan to kind of finish everything off, you know? But this being afterwards means that this is the finale, and it's just not at all a satisfying finale for any of these characters in any way. It doesn't bookend anything, because it didn't even continue anything from previous movies. There's not anything to hate about this movie, but besides that train scene, there's nothing to like about this movie. But you know what, because I don't hate this movie, and I do like that train scene, again, it's better than Apocalypse. It's still on that level, though, so it gets a medium fucking rare, like Apocalypse. But, you know, I don't hate it. I do hate that ultimately this is the finale, and it sucks, you know? This franchise that I kind of grew up with that just slowly lost its place due to the producers just not understanding not only what X-Men is in general, which was probably fine in the 2000s, because when I was growing up with these movies, I didn't know what X-Men was either. But what their version of X-Men was, they slowly lost what that was as time went on, and it just slowly became this husk of its former self. You know what, were the early X-Men's perfect? No, but at least they had this personality to them. At least they had some cool stuff going on, and they had some potential there with First Class and Days of Future Past, but they squandered it once again, and it became this completely other thing. Even though Deadpool 1 and 2 are still really good, and Logan is obviously a masterpiece, them being right alongside these two pieces of shit of Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix really goes to show you that they just went a whole other direction that was not at all what this franchise became to be. And while it had some good, it also had some bad, and unfortunately the bad really outshines the good. I would like to prefer to talk about and think about Logan and the Deadpool movies as the actual continuation of Days of Future Past, and that's it. But unfortunately, with this movie being the last one, this is the image people have now as the last movie. Thankfully, though, the thing that they were still working on before they fully ended this franchise, New Mutants is finally releasing next week. So the real last movie of this franchise, kind of, we'll be doing next week with New Mutants. We'll be seeing what could have been and what possibly maybe could be in the future? Who knows? I'm sorry this one's a little bit more of a simplistic one. I didn't really have much to say about this movie besides that it's boring as all shit. But hey, if you want more detailed reviews about, you know, better movies, especially the better X-Men movies, then you can check all those out on my channel. And more importantly, get ready for that crazy New Mutants shit next week by subscribing. Do you think Dark Phoenix is better or worse than Apocalypse? Leave that stuff in the comments. I'd love to find out about that. But most importantly, stay good, stay safe, and don't be an asshole.